Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Hare Krishna. I'll continue speaking on Sri Vishnu Sahasranama. This is a traditional form of katha praising Vishnu, who is Krishna. It's can be somewhat technical and philosophical, so it's not the more entertaining kind of katha. It's Vishnu Sahasranam is mostly chanted by brahmanas. It requires some sattva gun to appreciate this. My personal experience in going through this is that the more I go through it, the more I find it relishable. So if you find it a heavy dose, then just remember that happiness in the mode of goodness might seem like poison in the beginning, but it's nectar in the end. Yatha dagre vishamiva pariname mritopamam. Yat sukham satvikam proktam atma buddhi prasadajam. That such happiness gives real intelligence of the self, and actual satisfaction. Of course, this is not sattvic exactly. This is beyond the modes of nature. This is Shuddha Sattva to describe Krishna. But it requires a sattvic disposition to listen to philosophical discourses. So now I'm going to speak on name 479A. Those of you who were in the class yesterday in Brno, they might understand why it's A or A, because there are different commentators break up the words differently and take out different names. So as not to miss any of the nectar, I'm going through different names which are perceived by different commentators. So this name is Aksaram. The common meaning in spoken Indian languages of Kshara means a letter of the alphabet. Or more precisely, because Vedic knowledge is presented by sound rather than writing, the phoneme or the sound that it represents. In Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna says, Aksaranam akarosmi. Among the letters or the syllables, I am. In English it would be A, it seems to be in Czech it's A, and in Sanskrit it's A. A in Czech is, but that's the second one in Sanskrit. A. E. This is just like in, yeah, see he's saying also A. So in the schools in England, it would be, they learn A, B, C, D. So, in Indian languages, it's A, E, U, and so on. So among the aksharas, among the aksharanam akarosmi, among the basic constituents of the alphabet, Krishna is represented as A. He's the first. the word Akshara is composed of the first letter and the last one. A is the first and Ksha is the last. So everything that can be described is described using these sounds. So it's one way of saying Krishna is everything. Everything from A to Ksha. This word Aksaram in various grammatical forms appears several times in Bhagavad Gita. I just mentioned one. Aksaranam, that's the plural form. You're maybe not very familiar with it. It doesn't come up in the more famous verses, but it's a very important word in spiritual understanding. This Aksharanam Akarosmi, Krishna says, among the letters I am A. This is one usage of the word, but in the other usages it has a different meaning. Because Kshara, one of the meanings of Kshara is that which is perishable. So Akshara means imperishable. So that's obviously very important in spiritual understanding, because everything in this world is perishable. And the very definition of spiritual, or one of the basic points about that which is spiritual, is that it's imperishable. The name before this, or connected with this, is Sat. One of the important meanings of the word Sat is existence. So that which always exists is Aksharam. Now remember, this is the name of Krishna. So Krishna is imperishable. Ajopi sanavyayatma bhutanam ishvaro pisan prakritim swam adhishtaya sambhavami atma mayaya. Ajopi san, yes. Krishna says, although I'm unborn, ajopi san avyayatma, and my avyaya, this is a word which also means imperishable. Avyaya, Atma, my form doesn't decay. It's practically a synonym. Vyaya means diminishment. And we have the word vyavasayatmika buddhihi. That means fixed intelligence. So that word in this regard means business, because it means expenditure. Vyapara in Indian languages today, it means business. Yeah. Vyavaha, it means dealings with others. So it means that something is going from one place to another, or one state to another. There's some interaction or change. Krishna doesn't change. He's so another way of saying avyaya, akshara, imperishable. Now, of course, the Mayavadis, they say that phones off, please. Yeah. The Mayavadis say that, well, the absolute is avyaya, akshara, unchanging, imperishable. And we see that everything in this world is always changing and perishable. Therefore, this world is not spiritual, it's not real. And also, when they hear of Krishna's pastimes means there's activity. It's always changing. So that cannot be the ultimate truth either, according to the Mayavadis. Therefore, they contend that the ultimate truth is a state of absolute undifferentiation. Of course, there are various serious philosophical difficulties with this position. One is the very existence that we perceive around us at every moment. Then how on earth does it exist at all? How does it exist at all? So Krishna is imperishable and unchanging, but it seems that there is change. Krishna grows from being a baby to Kishore age, to the youthful age. At night, Krishna is tucked up in his bed, sleeping. Or at least Mother Yashoda thinks he is. And then, so that in the morning he's in Nandagram, and in the day he's out in the forest. So it's a change. So what's true? Is Krishna the supreme truth? How can that be if he's changing all the time? No, Krishna is unchanging. Krishna is unchanging in his nature. But he's not some boring statue or boring, just some light. He is Sat, which means existence, unchanging, but he's also Chit Ananda, full of consciousness and bliss. But bliss means there is, what is the highest bliss? The highest bliss is love, which means interaction. So Krishna is the unchanging principle. He's always the same in one sense. He's always Yashoda Nandana Vrajajana Ranjana. Always has been and always will be. But how he gives pleasure, well, even the way he gives pleasure to Yashoda and all the residents of Vrindavan, that's pretty fixed in many ways. Krishna, he steals butter. He's eternally stealing butter. He's always dancing with the gopis in his particular style. He doesn't say that, well, down on the earth they invented reggae style dancing or tap dancing or hip hop dancing. Let's check it out. Let's try it. Krishna has his own unique style of dancing. But it's always fresh. It doesn't become boring. Every day or every moment, the devotees experience Krishna as being fresh. Just like, to give a mundane example, who's the devotee we're staying with? Bhakti Jana, yeah. I was speaking with Bhakti Jana Prabhu about how the cows, after being locked up in the winter, they feel great happiness to get out of the barn in the spring and into the fresh green grassy fields. And he said, yeah, every day in the morning it's the same. They feel great bliss going back to their fields so they can get back to their main business of eating. And pretty much they have the same diet all the time. But they find it blissful all the time, as if it's something new every day. So Krishna's pastimes to the devotees, they always seem fresh and new. Even though you might think, well, it's a somewhat stereotyped theme. I saw some mundane commentators, mundane academic, his comments on Bengali Vaishnav poetry. He said, well, it's all the same. Different poets, they all write on this, not all exactly the same, but a vast body of Bengali Vaishnav poetry simply repeats the themes of Jayadev Goswami's Gita Govinda. So in slightly different ways, you get the same thing over and over again. But they don't realize, because they're mundane, what bliss the devotees experience by hearing again and again about Krishna's pastimes. Why is that? If you see some mundane movie, however great it is, you get bored if you see it even twice, probably. Someone might think that my idea of heaven is to sit and watch my favorite movie again and again and again. But probably by the third seeing, you'd think it's already like hell. But Krishna's pastimes, they become fresher and fresher and fresher every time. Now Krishna is unchanging. He's the unchanging, steady principle behind everything. Now here's an interesting comment from one of the commentators, that in order to recognize the phenomenon of change, there must be some non-changing entity or phenomenon to compare that with. Krishna is the changeless factor who is the substratum of everything that changes. An example is given, just like there is the totality of gold. There's so much gold all over the world. And that is worked or made into different ornaments, or coins, or statues. And sometimes the coins or statues or ornaments are melted down and mixed with other melted down items of gold and refashioned into different ornaments and coins and statues and whatever else may be made out of gold. But the nature of gold stays the same. It is the background on which all change, from which all change is made possible. Now, Baladev Vidyabhushan is the Gauriya Vaishnava comment, or the Gauriya Vaishnava Acharya who's made a commentary on the Vishnu Sahasranama. And he glosses this name Aksaram to be Omkar. That means just like we have Aksaranam, Akarosmi. So Akar means the letter A. And Omkar means the letter Om. Or it means to make that sound. So it comes to mean the letter. So that's one meaning, and that's the meaning which is understood by pretty much all the commentators on the word Aksaram in Bhagavad Gita chapter 8 text 11, in which Krishna says, Yad Aksaram Veda Vido Vadanti, persons who know the Vedas, they utter this Aksaram. So that's understood to be the particular Akshara, the particular syllable they utter is Om. 2 verses after that, Krishna says, Om ityeka aksharang brahma, which means Om, which is one letter but it's made of 3 letters. So this one syllable, which is Brahma, which is spiritual, which is the absolute truth. So by Vyaharan, by pronouncing, vibrating this one syllable, Mam Anusmaran, remembering me, Yah Prayati Tyajyan Dehang Sayati Paramam Gatim. By this practice, when one gives up his body, then he goes to the supreme destination. Then again, that Aksharana Makarosmi, that comes in the chapter where Krishna describes his different opulences as seen in the material world. In that same chapter he says, Giram Asmyekam Aksharam, among vibrations or words, Krishna says, I am the one Akshara. So whenever one Akshara is mentioned, that means Omkara. So among words that are pronounced, Krishna says, I am Omkara, Ekaksharam. So you see, I'll read some more from Bhagavad Gita, how this word comes many times in Bhagavad Gita. Chapter 3, text 15. Karma brahmodbhavang vidhi brahmakshara. You heard that? Akshara. Brahmakshara samudbhavam. So this states, here Krishna states, that regulated activities are prescribed in the Vedas. And the Vedas are directly manifested from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So here, Akshara means the Supreme Brahman, which means the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Now, here the regulated activities, that means, activity means, it's called karma here. That means, activities means there's change. And the results of karma, they are perishable. We know, from Bhagavad Gita, the 5 principal subjects of Bhagavad Gita are, anyone? Ishvara, the Supreme Lord. Jiva, the individual living being. You have to translate this also. Kala, which means time. Prakriti, nature or energy. And karma. So, out of all of those 5, 4 of them are eternal, but karma is not eternal. The principle of karma is eternal, that there is activity, that is an eternal principle. But that the results of various activities, they one acts, then the act is finished, and then the result of that action is enjoyed or suffered, and then that's finished. But karma brahmodbhavam vidhi, the regulative activities, they are prescribed in the Vedas. And brahmaksharam samudbhavam. And the Vedas, they arise from that which is imperishable. So the idea is that by performing regulative activities described in the Vedas, one can come to the platform of Akshara, the eternal imperishable, which is Krishna. Ultimately that means Krishna. The Mayavadis think that Akshara means just some undifferentiated spiritual light. Now at the beginning of chapter 8, Arjuna asks a series of important questions. The first one is King Tad Brahma, because Krishna had several times mentioned Brahma in the Bhagavad Gita prior to this, and particularly at the end of chapter 7, he had mentioned several topics. He speaks about persons who attain liberation, and he says, Te Brahma, they become spiritual. So the first of Arjuna's questions at the beginning of chapter 8 is, King Tad Brahma, what is that Brahma you're always talking about? So Krishna answers, Aksharang Brahma Paramam. Brahma is that which is imperishable. So that refers to the state of everything that is spiritual is imperishable. And Krishna, he is the basis of everything, both imperishable and perishable. So Krishna certainly is imperishable. Then the description of the spiritual world in chapter 8 again. Avyaktoksha ityuktas, the spiritual, tamahu paramam gatim. They say, persons who are in knowledge say that the Paramagati, the supreme destination, the spiritual world, is Avyakta means it's unmanifested. That means one meaning is that it's not seen in this world at all. That's another name in Vishnu Sahasranama, Avyakta. And also it's not manifested. This material world is manifested, then again unmanifested, but the spiritual world is always existing. Therefore it's called unmanifested. So here it's described, Avyakta. It's Avyakta and Akshara. So neither does it come into being, nor does it perish. That is the spiritual world. And Krishna is of the same nature. Krishna doesn't come into being, nor does he ever decay. Then, again in the... Oh, we already did that. Okay. Arjuna also, upon seeing the universal form of Krishna, describes Krishna as being Akshara. Which verse am I looking at? Here's Tvam, he says to Krishna, Tvam Aksaram. That's the beginning of chapter 11, text 18. Tvam Aksharang Paramam Veditavyam Tamasya Vishvasya Param Nidhanam Tamavyaya Shashvata Dharma Gota Sanatanas Tvam Purusho Matome. Actually, almost all the descriptions that he gives here of Krishna, they're all names in Vishnu Sahasranama. The first, he says, Tvam Akshara, you are, here Srila Prabhupada translates that as infallible, in the word-for-word translation. In the word-for-word translation? Infallible. And then again, avyaya, the word comes in the same verse. They're almost synonyms, akshara, avyaya. So Srila Prabhupada just, he translates, you are inexhaustible. He translates both of them in one, if you like. Now, at the beginning of chapter 12, Arjuna asks about this Akshara Avyakta. He says, Evam Sadada Yukta Ye Bhaktas Twang Paryupasate Ye Chapyaksharam Avyaktam Tesham Ke Yoga Vittamaha. Arjuna inquired, which are to be considered more perfect, those who are always properly engaged in your devotional service, or those who worship the impersonal Brahman, the unmanifested? So this, in this context, Arjuna himself identifies the Akshara with the impersonal. Doesn't have to be considered like that. But in one sense you could say it's a more impersonal quality of Krishna. It's, if you say someone has a joyful personality, that's, if you say a person is, if you refer to if you say the word joyful, that's very clearly connected with personality. If you say imperishable, it doesn't so clearly connect with personality. But we should understand that although the impersonalists understand Akshara to be impersonal, that is, Krishna's personality is Akshara, imperishable. Krishna also, in his reply to Arjuna, uses the word Akshara to describe that which is unmanifested and impersonal. When one finally understands that which is imperishable is Krishna, then he comes to the perfection of life. Now, this word the words kshara and akshara are very important in the 15th chapter. The Madhva Sampradaya particularly gives great importance to this chapter and to these verses which I'll read out. Listen carefully for the words kshara and chakshara. Chapter 15, text 16. Dvavimau purushau loke ksharas chakshara evacha. Kshara sarvani bhutani kutastho kshara uchyate. Now you might have heard akshara once there and kshara 3 times. But actually it's kshara twice and akshara twice. But kutastho kshara means kutastaha akshara. So the translation. There are 2 classes of beings, Krishna says. The fallible and the infallible. So here Srila Prabhupada translates kshara, that which is always subject to change, as fallible. And akshara as infallible. So continuing the translation of the verse. In the material world, every living entity is fallible. And in the spiritual world, every living entity is called infallible. Or we can take the word to mean perishable, imperishable. Or every living being in this world is perishable. By nature we're not perishable, but the personality as we identify it with a body is perishable. Probably in the world, the most famous person from what is now called the Czech Republic is who? Who would you think?
Jager. He's an ice hockey player.
Jager, ice hockey player. When was he around? Is he still playing? Oh, well, I was thinking more in longer term history. I must admit I never heard of him. Well, that's not very surprising, I guess, because, ice hockey is popular, not such a popular sport. Maybe in Canada and Russia it's very popular. In America somewhat. Anyway, I was going to say Franz Kafka. Among intellectuals at least he's well known. Maybe not so well known in Czech. But anyway, that personality is gone, thank God. He's practically the incarnation of misery. The jiva who was identified as Franz Kafka remains. Maybe he's an insect. He got metamorphosized into an insect. Well, what he doesn't know is that he made a novel about a man being metamorphosized into an insect, but it rarely happens. So, quite likely he's one of these flies buzzing around in this season, something like that. So in this world, every personality is metamorphosizable. I just made up the word. I don't think there's any such word. It's not exactly accurate. It's I don't know how you'd say that. It's certain to be metamorphosized. But in the spiritual world, no, your identity remains the same. And one is fully happy in that situation. Because in this material world, one is not happy in any situation. He tries going from situation to situation to situation. But in the spiritual world, one is fully satisfied. Whatever you may be a clump of grass and be fully satisfied. Piece of grass. Uddhava prayed to become a piece of grass in Vrindavan, thinking that was a more desirable position than being the famous great devotee Uddhava in Dwarka. So anyway, that's the point of this verse. In the material world, every living being is fallible or perishable, and in the spiritual world, every living being is infallible and imperishable. Avyakta. Sorry, akshara, that's the word. Then in the next verse, Krishna says, Uttamah purushastvanya paramatmeti udahritaha yolokatrayam avishya bibharta avyaya ishvaraha. Again, the word avyaya comes in this verse. So the translation, besides these two, namely the kshara and the akshara, there is the greatest living personality, the Supreme Soul, the imperishable Lord Himself, who has entered the three worlds and is maintaining them. So there are kshara beings and akshara, and Krishna is also akshara. But Krishna is above the ordinary akshara. Then again, in the next verse, text 18 of chapter 15, Krishna says, Yasmaksharam aksharada pichotamaha atosmi loke vedecha pratita purushotamaha. He says, because I am transcendental, beyond both the fallible and the infallible, which means beyond both the kshara and the akshara, and because I am the greatest, I am celebrated both in the world and in the Vedas as that Supreme Person. So why is it important to know this? Why are we discussing in so much detail? Well, in text 19 of in the next verse in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Yomameva samurho janati purushottamam Sasarva vid bhajati mam sarva bhavena bharata. Whoever knows me, that means in this way, as just described, as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna says, without doubting, is the knower of everything. He therefore engages himself in full devotional service to me, O son of Bharata. So it's important to understand that Krishna is akshara, He's imperishable. But it's also important to know how He's distinguished from others who are also akshara, the liberated souls. In the purport to Bhagavad Gita 11, chapter 37, Srila Prabhupada states, the word Aksaram is very significant, because this material creation is subject to destruction, but the Lord is above this material creation. He is the cause of all causes, and being so, He is superior to all the conditioned souls within this material nature, as well as the material cosmic manifestation Himself. He is therefore the all-great Supreme. Oh, so many things in Gita. I just always discovering new things in Bhagavad Gita. Just making some little note there. Yeah, Bhagavad Gita is Akshara. It's imperishable. Or Avyaya. That word is Imang Vivasvate Yogam Proktavanaham Avyayam. Krishna said, I spoke this imperishable science of yoga to Vivasvan. So these teachings are also imperishable, teachings of Bhagavad Gita. And if we imbibe those teachings, then we also become Akshara, imperishable. But we become Akshara in service to the Supreme Akshara, who is Krishna. And then we can join Krishna in the spiritual world, which is also Akshara, which is manifested in this material world. And just as we're celebrating today Krishna's birthday, we'll also take birth in those who are to join Krishna's Leela. They take birth where Krishna takes birth in this material world. And they join Krishna in the spiritual world, and they go from the spiritual world manifested in this material world to the spiritual world in the spiritual world. So, the next name is, I just yesterday and today discussed Sat and Aksaram. Actually, in the verse of Vishnu Sahasranama, it comes round the other way. Aksaram Sat. And these two words can be taken as one name, which the Parashara Bhatta, the Sri Vaishnava commentator, does. He takes that as one name. Sat Aksaram. Sat Aksaram, Akshara Sat. You can put the word either way round. So in that case, Sat, he analyzes this to mean that Sat, it means existence, and here Aksharam acts as an adjective for Sat. So if we take Akshara as a name in itself, then it becomes a noun. But as an adjective for Sat, it means he whose existence is never diminished or destroyed in any way, which is very important to understand. We're celebrating Janmashtami, it means Krishna is born. In Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna teaches, Jatasya hi druvang mritya druvang janma mritasya cha. He says that everyone who takes birth dies, and everyone who dies gets born again. So you might think, well, Krishna's born, so he must have died previously. He says himself in Bhagavad Gita, and Krishna's born, today's Krishna's birthday, so he'll die after some time. And in fact, there's a description in Mahabharata and Srimad Bhagavatam of Krishna dying. Wrong. He's Sat Aksharam. His existence is eternal and never diminishing. Having said that everyone who's born must die, Krishna says, well, I'm Aja, I don't get born. Ajopi sanavayatma bhutanam ishvaropi san prakriting swam adhishtaya sambhavami atma mayaya. Krishna says, although I'm unborn and my transcendental form never deteriorates, and although I am the Lord of all living beings, I appear in this world by my own desire, my Atma Maya, my own desire, my own energy, my own mercy. Sorry, that was a long and difficult sentence. Did you get that, Atma Maya? Yeah, by his own energy, his own mercy, and what else did I say? Well, another one which I didn't say was as in manifesting an illusion. His own desire, yeah. So Krishna he only appears to be born. Therefore he says, Janma karma chame divyam. My apparent birth and apparent activities, they're all transcendental. It means that Krishna, his activities are akshara, they're imperishable. They're imperishable in another way, in as much as he is, his activities, they're glorified throughout time, immemorial. If we go back to a previous day of Brahma, we'll find that there are people glorifying Krishna's pastimes, because this is Nitya Lila, eternal pastime. So Krishna, he's getting born. He's unborn, but he gets born again and again and again and again. And that is his transcendental pastime. And he is born again and again and again as Krishna. It's not like someone has some materially cobbled together identity as Franz Kafka and later becomes a worm. Or whatever. You take any person. In this village there are so many people living. But that particular matrix, the body and the mentality that goes with it, that lasts for a short time, then it's gone forever. But Krishna appears again and again in the same form and the same personality. What are the components of that personality? Well, that's discussed here in Vishnu Sahasranama, different features of the Supreme Lord. And in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, particular personal qualities of Krishna are described. So, Krishna's, he doesn't change. He changes, he doesn't change. That is called achinta bheda bhed, inconceivable difference and non-difference. Now another meaning of Sadaksaram is that he never forsakes the good. Or another way of putting that is that the good that he does is imperishable. Srila Prabhupada often gave the example of mundane welfare work. If we feed a hungry man, he'll be hungry again in 6 hours or so. But if we give him the spiritual direction by which he can become free from birth and death, then he'll never suffer material miseries anymore. So the good or the welfare that Krishna does by speaking Bhagavad Gita, for instance, out of the many ways he does welfare, that is imperishable. Other purported welfare activities other than giving Krishna consciousness, they're all misleading. They can't really help us at all. But Krishna consciousness helps us fully and in the best possible way, because it brings us to the position of imperishable auspiciousness. So Sadakshara means he never forsakes the good. In other words, Krishna looks after those who are good. Nahi kalyana krit kaschid durgating tata gacchati. My dear Arjuna, Krishna says, Tata, my dear, my darling, my beloved one, one who does good, one who performs welfare for others, he never attains a bad destination. He never attains a bad destination. Very encouraging words from Krishna. Now the next name, 481, is maybe one of the most surprising names in Vishnu Sahasranama. Krishna is everything, everything is in Krishna. Everything is possible only because of... nevertheless, our basic understanding is that God is good. So the next name is Asat. Sat basically means good. That's one of the basic meanings of the word Sat. So if we say, well, Krishna is not good, that doesn't sound right, does it? Basic understanding is that God is good. If we say God is not good, then we become an atheist. In fact, one of the world's most prominent atheists, who died recently, wrote a book called God is Not Good. Christopher Hitchens. Rest in peace. Not very likely. Actually, no one rests in peace. They say rest in peace with the idea, just peacefully relax and then Jesus will come and take you to heaven or throw you into hell. But in the meantime, you can rest in peace. Okay. I said about Christopher Hitchens, rest in peace. Yeah, you said that. So it's not very likely that he's resting in peace. The people, they have the idea that you rest in peace, that you just have a little relaxation and then Jesus comes and then he takes you to heaven or he throws you into hell. Anyway, Christopher Hitchens is dead. Where is he now? God alone knows. If we, probably you say that in Czech also. If something no one knows, oh, you say, well, God knows. That means none of us know. Maybe God knows. Do you say that in Czech?
Yes.
Yeah, I would think so. So how can God be Asat? He's already been described as Sat. That makes sense. If you say someone's good, you say they're a Sadhu, which means Sat. That's also one of the names in Vishnu Sahasranama. Or if you say about, even now in Bengali or Hindi, if you say someone is, it's not very common because the level of their language has come down to the movie Bollywood level. But if you say Sat Purush, that means, Sat Purush, very good, respectable person. Maybe I missed something. Anyway, I'll go back. So, and if you say, oh, that person's Asat, it means, not good. So how can Krishna be Asat? Well, he himself says in Bhagavad Gita, Sada Sat Chaham Arjuna. He says, I am Sat and Asat. So in this context, Sat means that which exists, or the spiritual nature, and Asat means matter. That's the way that, and that's the explanation that Ramanujacharya also gives. He explains it thus. Ramanuja explains it like this. Sat is that which exists in all phases of time, eternally existing. And Asat is that which doesn't always exist. It may exist now, but not in the past, and not in the future. Or it existed in the past, but not now. Or it may exist in the future, but not now. So, it's existent, but not permanently. Therefore it's perishable, ksharam, but that's also manifested from Krishna. So in one sense, the material world is non-different from Krishna. In as much as Krishna is sarva karana karanam, the cause of all causes. So in as much as the effect is non-different from the cause, being inseparable from it, so in the same way, this material world can be described as, in one sense, non-different from Krishna. So in that sense, Krishna is Asat also, as he himself describes, Sadasat Chaham Arjuna. Now, another meaning of Asat is that Krishna is the cause of distress to those who perform sinful acts. So Asat also means undesirable. So persons who perform undesirable actions, they get undesirable reactions. Those reactions are given by Krishna. Ultimately, not directly. That's done by the agency of the material energy. But again, as the effect is in one sense non-different from the cause, inseparable from the cause, then Krishna is also Asat. A devotee recognizes that. If something undesirable happens to him, he thinks, oh, this is Krishna acting on me. Srila Prabhupada said that he was in Calcutta when he was being bombed in the Second World War. And he thought, this is also Krishna in another form. He saw Krishna everywhere and in everything, even in that which is asat or undesirable. He is also Asat in the estimation of the atheists. They don't believe that he exists. They don't perceive him at all. For them, he is Asat. His intrinsic nature is Sat. But yayata mang prapadyante tangs tathaiva bhajami aham. Those who don't want to see Krishna, for them, he is not manifest. It's as if he doesn't exist at all. Or there are demons who blame Krishna. Or they blame God. There are some people who, if anything good happens, they say, well, I deserve that. And anything bad happens to them, they blame God. What's wrong with this God? What's he doing this? Why is he doing this? Or there are those who say that God cannot exist, otherwise he would not have created suffering in the world. So God is bad. Christopher Hitchens said, God is not good. His thesis is that people who believe in God, they do all kinds of bad things in the name of God, so God must be not good. He didn't like to be called an atheist. He said, I'm not an atheist. I'm an anti-theist. A real hardcore demon. Masquerading as a gentleman of this world. Although in some respects you can't blame people like that too much. When they're presented with the very insufficient theologies of Christianity or Islam, well, you can't blame them for rejecting that. In some ways you can't blame them for rejecting that. In fact, we reject it also. We reject the theology that in all of eternal time, God, out of some whim, created this material world, or Satan created it in opposition to God. And God creates many, many living beings to populate this world. Only one planet, mind you. There's a huge universe with millions of planets, but there's only one planet that God puts living beings onto. And then those who follow the right path, they get delivered to heaven, and everyone else goes to hell forever without any chance of redemption. And there's no intelligent way of understanding what is the correct path. Some say Sunni Islam, some say Shia Islam, and some say Protestant Christianity, some say Catholic Christianity, some say Orthodox Christianity. And many people are raised in cultures where there's no conception of any of these religions. So God creates all of this, creates a whole bunch of living beings, some of whom go to heaven, the majority go to hell. And after the day of judgment, it's all over. So out of the vast eternal expanse of time, the whole material world is just like that, a little. And in the meantime, so many living beings get carted off to hell to suffer forever. In the meantime, they fight with each other and kill each other and torture each other. So it's not surprising if people like Christopher Hitchens say God is not good. So the discussion of this Vishnu Sahasranama should help to give a clearer idea of what is actually the nature of God. Then there are persons who directly confront Krishna. Persons like Agha, Baka, Putana. Persons like Kamsa, Shishupal, Jarasandha. So they see Krishna as being Asat. He's not good. So Krishna reciprocates with them in that way. Krishna is the supreme loving and merciful person. But if you don't want to love him, if you want to be a competitor of him, and if you want to kill him, if you are so Asat that you see him as being Asat, then Krishna will reciprocate. You want me to be Asat? Okay, I'll show you. You'll see who can be Asat. You want to be a demon and torture people, and okay, I'll give you what you deserve. What the demons don't know is that Krishna, he doesn't exactly give them what they deserve. kills them, and out of his causeless mercy he gives them liberation, for which they're really not fit. So even in his being Asat, he's the supreme Sat, the supreme good. So Asat can also be understood to be the illusion of this material world. That is also Krishna in one respect. He's non-different from his energies. Shakti, Shakti Mata, Abheda. The Vedanta Sutra says the energy and the energetic are non-different. Just as in one sense the sun and the sunshine are non-different. We can say that the sun is in this room, inasmuch as this room is lit by the sunlight. So that is true. In another sense it's not true because that the sun is in this room. So to say that Krishna is, his illusory energy is true, so in that sense he can also be said to be Asat. Now there are so many good qualities: truthfulness, nobility, compassion. So those qualities, they stem from Krishna. These qualities are all Sat. But in another sense, Krishna is different from them. He is the sum total of all those qualities. He transcends those qualities. We cannot describe him by one quality. He's all good qualities. And particularly those qualities as manifested in this material world. Krishna is not the mundane compassion, mundane truthfulness. Krishna transcends all of them. So in that way he's also not Sat. He's not limited by the worldly conception of Sat. Hare Krishna. I'll finish there. Any question about this? It's somewhat difficult subject matter, no doubt. Anyone? Any question?
We're speaking about Krishna's consistency and that he is permanent, and we see ourselves, we have a tendency to be quite flickering, and it is also important for our spiritual life to be steady and not changing in our determination. So how can we improve, because we see we are always changing and we are not steady.
We're not steady. Krishna is steady. So take shelter of Krishna. Then we'll become steady. This in Bhagavad Gita, chapter 11, text 37, Arjuna, I already quoted that as saying, Arjuna says to Krishna, Tvam Aksaram, you are Akshara. And he also says, Sad Asat, you are also Sat and Asat. And Tat Paramyat, and you're also transcendental to being Sat and Asat. So here Srila Prabhupada translates Sat Asat as cause and effect. We are not steady, we are weak. We are Asat. In this, as much as we're influenced by Maya, we are Asat. So we take shelter of Krishna. Daivihi esha gunamayi mama maya duratyaya mameva ye prapadyante maya metam taranti te. You can just give the translation of that. Okay, Hare Krishna. So we'll have a leg stretching half hour. And then it's off for Harinam Sankirtan, is that right? Oh, I missed something. Wait a minute, there's more. Vishnunath Chakravarti Thakur, he describes Asat as described in Krishna describes himself in Bhagavad Gita as Asat, and Vishnunath Chakravarti Thakur in his commentary says that this means gross as compared to subtle. So that means, again, matter as compared to spirit. Krishna is matter also. Yeah, so Krishna is matter as well as spirit. That's the purport. Hare Krishna.